Alright, let's dive into this because it's a story that's got the MMA world buzzing, and personally, I think it's a perfect example of how the UFC operates behind the scenes. So, Dana White recently confirmed that Arman Tsarukyan was originally booked to face someone else at UFC 331, and that's where things get really interesting. What makes this really intriguing is the context. Tsarukyan was supposed to fight Charles Oliveira, a rematch that had fans on the edge of their seats. But then, tragedy struck with the sudden passing of Alan Nascimento, Oliveira's teammate. From my perspective, this isn't just about a fight falling through, it's about the human element in a sport that's often seen as purely brutal. It raises a deeper question: how do fighters and the UFC navigate these emotional challenges while keeping the business moving? Now, let's talk about the opponent's switch to Mauricio Ruffy. On paper, it feels like a step down, right? Tsarukyan going from a potential title eliminator against Oliveira to facing the number 10 ranked Ruffy. But here's where it gets fascinating. Reports suggest Tsarukyan was promised a title shot if he beats Ruffy, as a thank you for rolling with the change. Personally, I think this is the UFC's way of keeping a rising star happy while also testing his adaptability. What many people don't realize is that fighters like Tsarukyan are in a unique position. They're not just athletes, they're commodities. The UFC needs them to stay relevant, and this move feels like a calculated risk. One thing that immediately stands out is how this fight is being framed. Is it a title eliminator? Officially, no. But if you take a step back and think about it, the UFC rarely does anything without a bigger picture in mind. Tsarukyan beating Ruffy could set up a title shot against Justin Gaethje, which would be massive. What this really suggests is that the UFC is already thinking about 2027, and they're using UFC 331 as a launching pad. A detail I find fascinating is how Dana White handled the confirmation. He didn't mention Oliveira or explain why the original fight fell apart. It's classic Dana: keep the focus on the fight, not the drama. Now, let's talk about Ruffy's role in all this. He's the underdog here, but he's got everything to gain. If he beats Tsarukyan, he spoils the UFC's plan and catapults himself into title contention. In my opinion, this is why MMA is so compelling. It's not just about the fights, it's about the narratives, the stakes, and the unpredictability. What makes this co-main event so intriguing is that it's not just a fight, it's a chess move by the UFC, a test for Tsarukyan, and a career-defining opportunity for Ruffy. If you ask me to rate the UFC 331 card, I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. Why? Because while the main event is a flyweight title rematch, the co-main event is where the real story is. My top 3 fights? Joshua Van vs Alexander Pantoja for the title, Tsarukyan vs Ruffy for the drama, and honestly, any fight that keeps the momentum going after such a turbulent build-up. Here's my closing thought: the UFC is a machine, but it's also a human-driven sport. This situation with Tsarukyan, Oliveira, and Ruffy reminds us that behind every fight is a story, a decision, and a consequence. Personally, I think this is what makes MMA so captivating. It's not just about who wins or loses, it's about everything that happens in between. So, what do you think? Is Tsarukyan's fight against Ruffy a title eliminator in disguise? Let me know in the comments below.